Have you ever heard the phrase, chasing a girl means losing her? If chasing a girl means losing her, then the opposite must also be true. If you can make a girl chase you, then she's yours. And for older men, the best way to attract younger women is through strategic conversation. It's not just about what you say, but how you conduct the interaction. The key is asking the right questions. Today in this video, we'll explore how to shift the power dynamic in your interactions by asking strategic questions. Most men ask questions just to keep the conversation going as if they were playing checkers. But I'll show you how to play chess, where each question you ask is a strategic move to make her chase you. We'll review why specific questions, which I call triggering chase questions, can make a woman chase you, especially a younger woman. Typically, men chase women, which almost always fails. For a woman to chase you, you need to give her clear reasons. We'll cover 5 types of triggering questions that make a woman chase you for different reasons. First, we have questions that set a standard, offering an incentive that encourages her to chase you. We'll talk about questions that spark curiosity and questions that create a sense of urgency. Next, we'll look at validating questions, touching on the golden mirror principle, making her seek your approval. Finally, we'll explore questions that demonstrate authority, allowing you to subtly show your expertise and knowledge. These triggers will help increase her interest and motivation to approach you. Now let's dive into the questions. Number 1. Questions that set a standard. If you want a woman to pursue you, it's essential to offer her something to strive for, which means you need to set a standard. And to set a standard, you need to know your own criteria. As a more mature man, this shouldn't be too complicated. You should already be clear about what you're looking for in a woman and likely have a well-formed idea. However, what you might not be doing, or at least not effectively, is communicating these criteria to the women you're interacting with. Most men don't set standards, which often results in the woman setting the standard, leading him to chase her and eventually lose her interest. Even if you're one of the few men comfortable expressing your standards to a woman, you're likely doing so in a somewhat direct manner. Just listing your criteria and expectations almost always feels like a cold shower, right? While it's positive that you're setting a standard, doing so can disrupt the flow of the conversation. A much more effective way to communicate your standards is to integrate them into a question. Instead of stating, "I like intelligent women," you could ask, "What was the last good book you read?" Or, if you appreciate well-traveled or adventurous women, you could ask about the most interesting place she's ever visited or the last country she explored. By setting a standard this way, you achieve a few important things. First, you show that you have standards, but do so subtly, as you'd only ask about the last good book she read if it's relevant to you. This communicates your expectations and gives her something to strive for. Even if she hasn't read a good book recently, if she tries to answer the question, it establishes that she's trying to meet your expectations, which puts her in a position to chase you. Now, if a woman doesn't answer the question, for example, if she says something like, "Oh, I don't read," that's not necessarily bad, as it opens up room for light teasing. Whenever this happens, I usually respond playfully. For instance, in the case of reading, I might say something like, "You don't read? Seriously, what's that like?" This puts her a bit on the defensive and creates healthy, attractive tension. I've found that women often respond to this. She might say something like, "Oh, the last good book I read was in high school," or "The last good book I read was in college." To this, I usually say something like, "Ah, that makes sense, since you stopped reading because no one showed you good books." This gives her an out, allowing her to agree with me and maintain her pride while still positioning me as someone who knows good books. More importantly, it creates curiosity. Most women, at least, will be intrigued and ask something like, "All right, so what are these good books? What should I read?" By doing this, even if she's a bit skeptical, she's confirming that you have knowledge she desires. In other words, you have an incentive to make her chase you. Think of it as an itch she wants you to scratch. At first, it might be a light itch, right? But the more you leave it unanswered, the more intense it becomes. Whenever I meet a woman and notice she's curious about something I said, about my lifestyle, or something that came up in the conversation, I use that as a chase trigger. So if a woman asks about books she should read, I'd probably respond with something like, "Oh yes, I'll tell you when I get to know you a bit better." Or, "Sure, I'll give you a reading list soon. But first, I want to know about," and then I'd change the subject. This keeps the incentive out of reach. I'm not essentially saying no, but I'm saying not yet. If you understand how to keep an incentive out of reach, you know the secret to making a woman chase you. Number 2, Questions that spark curiosity. Sparking curiosity is an effective way to make a woman want to know more about you. By asking questions that suggest an interesting story or unique experience, you create a mystery that prompts her to seek more information. For example, you might ask, "What's the most unusual or surprising situation you've ever experienced while traveling?" Or, "What's the most challenging project or experience you faced at work?" These questions not only reveal what the woman finds interesting, but also make her want to share her own experiences and possibly discover more about your stories. Maintaining an air of mystery about your own experiences and interests can further increase her curiosity. For instance, if she shares a fascinating story, you could respond, "That's really interesting. I have a similar story, but I'll only tell you when we get to know each other a bit better." This way, you keep her intrigued and wanting to know more about you. Number 3. Questions that create a sense of urgency. Creating a sense of urgency can be an effective way to motivate a woman to act quickly. By asking questions that suggest a limited opportunity or that something is about to happen, you can encourage her to engage more actively. For example, you might ask, "If you could travel anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would you go and why?" Or, "If you had the chance to achieve a personal dream before the end of the year, what would it be?" These questions not only reveal what's important to her, but also create a sense that she needs to act quickly to seize these opportunities. When asking these questions, you can also mention that you have some suggestions or related stories, but would prefer to share them when you meet in person. This can make her feel like she needs to act quickly to learn more about you and your ideas. Number 4. Questions that validate. Demonstrating your interest in a woman is crucial, as no one will put effort into someone they consider out of reach. However, it is essential to communicate the right kind of interest and do so appropriately. If you limit yourself to showering a woman with compliments and flattery, you might end up seeming desperate and pathetic, which could certainly undermine any attraction or even the respect she might have for you. A more effective approach to expressing interest is to validate and acknowledge her accomplishments, especially those that required effort. This is very different from a superficial compliment focusing on traits she was simply born with, such as her appearance. By validating her, you connect with her on a deeper and more intimate level. Almost all women find validation more rewarding and attractive than a hollow compliment they've likely heard countless times. To validate appropriately, pay attention when she's speaking, as this will reveal how she wants to be recognized. This aspect is crucial. The secret to standing out among all the men competing for her attention is recognizing her in the way she wants to be seen. To illustrate, consider the following story. Joao was at a party and spotted Anna, an attractive woman he had noticed a few times but never had a chance to talk to. She was chatting animatedly with some friends, and he decided it was a good opportunity to approach. He introduced himself and started a casual conversation about the party and the presents. After a few minutes, he noticed Anna mentioned her love for travel. Joao saw a chance to create an incentive that would make her curious and asked, "What's the most memorable trip you've ever taken and why?" Anna, excited, began to talk about a trip to Italy, describing how she loved the culture, the food, and the people. Joao, noticing he had piqued her interest, responded strategically, "I also love to travel and know some places you'd probably love, but I think it would be better to tell you about them once we get to know each other a bit better. But tell me, what else do you enjoy doing besides traveling?" Anna, now more engaged in the conversation, continued to share her other passions and hobbies. Joao kept validating her responses, paying close attention and asking detailed questions about her experiences and interests. He knew he was building a deeper connection and demonstrating genuine interest in getting to know her. For example, when Anna mentioned her passion for cooking, Joao asked, "What's the most challenging dish you've ever cooked and how was the experience?" Anna, excited, talked about how she learned to make authentic Italian risotto and how rewarding it was to get the recipe right. Joao followed up with a validation, saying, "You seem to have a true passion for cooking and an incredible dedication to learning new recipes. That's really impressive." By the end of the night, Anna was clearly interested in Joao. He managed to keep her engaged and curious, always keeping the incentive just out of immediate reach, and validating her interest in a way that made her feel special and understood. This approach made Anna feel that Joao saw her uniquely and valued her qualities beyond her appearance, creating a genuine and lasting connection. Understanding this can set you apart from all the other men she's talking to. If I had to choose 5 dating skills to master, validation through questions would undoubtedly be on that list. Therefore, it's a skill you should work to refine. What this means is that you need to become an attentive listener. Listen carefully. When a woman is talking, almost think of yourself as a detective. Pay attention to the words she uses, the phrases, the expressions, and ask yourself, what seems to be most important to her? What qualities seem most significant to her? Once you identify a characteristic or skill central to her identity, the next step is to figure out how to show her that you perceive her this way, rather than simply stating it. As I mentioned earlier, asking a question is often an effective way to achieve this goal. Whether asking for a recommendation, advice, or even her opinion, validating through a question is a highly effective way to communicate attractively with women. Number 5. Questions that demonstrate authority. When you possess authority or are an expert in something, especially if it interests a woman, it can serve as an attraction trigger. Even a basic understanding can be appealing. However, it is essential to demonstrate your knowledge subtly, without seeming like you're showing off or bragging. To achieve this, a well-crafted question can be very effective. To illustrate, consider the following situation. In a sophisticated bar in New York, Joao met Maria, a charming woman who worked as an editor at a fashion magazine. Interested, he started a conversation, and during the exchange of information, Maria mentioned her job. Joao was also in the editorial field, but instead of simply stating, "Oh, I'm an editor too," he chose to demonstrate his knowledge and authority more subtly. Thus he asked, "Are you a real editor or an editorial assistant?" The question made Maria laugh, and she explained that in fact she had just been promoted to full editor 3 weeks ago. Joao smiled and responded, "Well then, your name is on the magazine's masthead. That's impressive." This response was relevant because Joao knew that the masthead of a publication is the section that lists the editorial team. Although it's something most people don't notice, those who work in the industry recognize its importance. Maria was impressed with Joao's knowledge and the subtle way he demonstrated his authority. This example perfectly illustrates how well-crafted questions that use specialized knowledge and technical jargon can establish someone as an authority. By using this approach, Joao managed to stand out without appearing overbearing or vain, creating a genuine and attractive connection with Maria. If you simply tell a woman, "Oh, I do that," during a conversation, the interaction tends to follow a rather predictable path. It becomes an interview-style conversation because everyone can anticipate what comes next. When you use a direct approach, she's likely to ask, "Oh, which magazine do you work for? What's it like working there? Do you know so-and-so?" That's why you should always demonstrate your authority or insider status in a way that intrigues the woman, arousing her curiosity and making her want to know more. It's worth noting that some of the best techniques and tactics you can learn are those women use with you. By observing and analyzing these approaches, you can deconstruct them and incorporate them into your own repertoire. In summary, the key to making a woman chase you is to change the traditional power dynamic in interactions through strategic questions. This method is especially effective for older men who want to attract younger women. The approach involves 5 types of questions: setting standards, validating qualities, demonstrating authority, sparking curiosity, and creating a sense of urgency. First, questions that set standards are crucial. They show your expectations and offer something for the woman to chase, such as asking, "What's the last good book you read?" This communicates your interest and creates a need for her to meet your standards. Secondly, questions that spark curiosity like, "What's the most surprising thing you've ever done that no one would expect from you?" And questions that create a sense of urgency like, "If you could achieve a dream immediately, what would it be?" Add additional layers of interest and attraction. Questions that validate are fundamental for building a deeper connection. Validating the woman for something she worked hard to achieve, like asking, "What's the most challenging dish you've ever cooked?" creates a meaningful bond and shows you value her beyond her appearance. Additionally, questions that demonstrate authority help establish your value without seeming arrogant. For example, asking, "Are you a real editor or an editorial assistant?" shows your knowledge without bragging, which can pique her curiosity. Each of these approaches, setting standards, sparking curiosity, creating a sense of urgency, validating qualities, and demonstrating authority, helps create a richer and more engaging conversation. They make you stand out and stimulate her desire to get to know you better. By applying these techniques, you not only change the power dynamic, but also establish a solid foundation for a lasting connection. So, the next time you talk to an attractive woman, especially if there's a significant age difference, remember to use these strategic questions to turn the game in your favor. Thank you all for watching and sticking with us. I hope the techniques and strategies shared in this video have been useful and that you feel more confident in your interactions. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. See you in our next video.